What's up, guys, and welcome back to another episode of Stock Talk with David. I'm David. In today's video, we are talking about Boeing, ticker symbol BA. And so I'm really excited for this one. There's a lot of potential and what's a solid business. So before we get started, if you're not a member yet of our VIP Discord, do check it out. It's a great place for like-minded individuals who are dedicated to learning more about the stock market and how to make money. And so firstly, what I want to look at here is Boeing. They're going to have earnings on the 26th. They have a ton of orders from airliners for the 737 MAX. Most notably is actually the order from Allegiant. So they've ordered 50 737 MAX jets with, I believe, another option to order 50 more in the future. This is really significant because that means what? They have faith in Boeing that they can do it. It's good for the company, but also they've been with Airbus for almost forever, I believe. So if they can take the business from Airbus to Boeing, that's a big thing, right? That's pretty cool. And so nextly, they also are going to have, I believe this is the number, but 4,100 MAX planes backlogged on the order book as of November 21st, or sorry, November 2021. That's really, really big, right? That's a lot of planes. It's a lot of planes to deliver. And so all these orders that they have coming through, going back to production, it's just going to be a really great tailwind for the stock, right? So I'm excited for that. Now, the article that I do want to look at is this: Boeing stock is rising because its 737 MAX jet could be flying in China soon. That's really cool, right? So Bloomberg on Thursday reported that the jet might be recertified to fly in China by the end of January. Boeing declined to comment. Not necessarily good or bad that they declined to comment. It could just be they don't want to get wrapped up in allegations, regulations, SEC stuff. Who knows, right? They only allowed to talk about certain things that might be outside the scope, right? So if they are allowed to fly back in China, that's a huge deal because the China market, the Asian market, a lot of business popping up. If Boeing can penetrate that with the jets and work with the airliners to get there, that's huge, right? So we're going to be pretty excited for that, right? And just to be fair, things that would affect Boeing stock, besides all the catalysts we just talked about, would be the travel restrictions from COVID, although that is pretty unlikely. We'll talk about more of the catalyst, talk more about the financials. Firstly, I want to get a chart up so we can talk about where we've been at, and so you can get a frame of reference for what I'm talking about. So we can see that 2017, 2018, great, went up a lot, consolidated, terrible, right? This right here, this is all the COVID stuff, really, really volatile. It started to calm down a little bit in terms of the volatility. We have this descending triangle pattern right now, and we can break past this 240 zone off of really good news. We got to have good news, right? That'll send it up, and I'm excited for that. A lot of call option coming in, et cetera, et cetera. So if we get into the financials, very first thing I'm looking at is the revenue growth, and we can see that it's been up, down, up, down, up, down, looking like it's really going to start to accelerate for 2021 and 2022. That's going to be these months right here, right? So if we can accelerate it in that, we have one more quarter to complete, and that'll be on January 26th, the earnings call, so we'll see how that actually ties in. What I'm excited about is actually the margin expansion. When I do see that they have margin expansion, it means that we're going to have a higher chance of free cash flow and a better chance of great earnings, right? So we can get better margin, we can get all those things, we can really start to return some value to the shareholders. And so next up, if you've watched these videos, you know that I really like looking at the income statement first. When I do this, I'm getting a picture of how they spent their money. So I'll pull it up. The things that I'm looking for, gross profit, we just talked about that a little bit, SG&A, R&D, interest expense, these things tell me what they're spending their money on. We understand right now why it's down. It's just because COVID, they have been delivering a lot of planes, although the order book has ticked up significantly in the past couple of months, right? So if I look, I make my assumptions here, cost of goods sold, I mean, it's nearly consistent. We can see, striking distance, right? A little bit tight right here. In this last 12 months up to September 30th. Okay, I mean, it does make sense, right? It's not great, but it makes sense. SG&A, so the SG&A costs that we're seeing, this uptick here, what is that related to? Well, that's related to the compensation, to some of the discounts and allowances they've made to their customers because they've been late in delivering planes, whether it's the 737 MAX or most notably the 787. I believe it's the Dreamliner. They've had issues with one of their suppliers, Boeing has, and it's caused an entire slowdown of that plane, right? But I believe that they're expecting it, and I looked at the last earnings call and the last release, probably sometime before the second half to get that resolved. So that'll be good. Come over here to interest expense. Definitely they are paying more in interest, and we'll talk more about that when we get to the balance sheet, but they've had to bring on some loans, and so they're going to be paying more in interest, right? Now they have been paying some of it back, not to get ahead of myself, but they have been paying some of it back, so that means that they're going to get a little bit better juice on the asset, but also on the equity and how that goes into net income, how that goes to EPS, etc., right? So next up, we're looking at the balance sheet. The first thing I'm looking at here is assets over liabilities. I want to get the quick ratio. And just by looking at that, they're just slightly below, maybe between 0.8 to 0.9, meaning they're just slightly insolvent. It doesn't really matter. I don't care if they're slightly insolvent or slightly solvent. As long as they're not on either end of the extreme, I'm totally cool, right? It doesn't quite matter. Next up, the thing that I'm looking at here is going to be the retained earnings. Retained earnings tells me how much that they're keeping, right? If they're keeping money, they're growing their retained earnings each year. That's fantastic. That's really what adds value to the shareholders, right? Now, for obvious reasons, they have ticked down in the past couple of years. Again, that does make sense. When I go to treasury stock is just basically an accumulation of stock the company has repurchased or put into their treasury, and they're holding it. Hasn't completely been deleted yet from the market, but basically they're holding it, right? Now, why would they do this? Well, a lot of times companies will hold on to treasury stock and report it as a negative number on the balance sheet so they can juice up some of their equity numbers, right? Specifically the return on equity. If they have a high net income and a low equity number, it means that the ROE is really high, but it's kind of artificial, right? Because they've bought all these shares, they've done all this work, but it's not really on the books. So we always add it back to common equity. When we do that, we're still a little bit below, we're still actually quite a bit below where we need to be to match liabilities to equity. Not my favorite sign, but again, I don't think they've ever actually been there before meeting it. So, and they've been just fine. So again, it's very cyclical. It's a very cyclical business, right? Last thing I want to look at here before I get my opinion is the cash flow statement. So we're going to look at the statement of cash flows. What are we looking at here? Operations, cash from operations, right? We understand that they have been taking a hit in the revenue, haven't been delivering planes, COVID, et cetera, right? Same old story. Not a big deal. Cash from investing, haven't really done much. They've done all the same thing. When I come over here and I look at issuance of common stock, we're seeing very small numbers, so that just could mean that they're doing employee compensation or stock-based compensation, giving some shares out, things like that. Now they do have a history of repurchasing stock, and when we can repurchase stock, we're limiting the amount of numbers on the market. So therefore, all things being equal, the price must go up, and they have a good history of doing that. I would love to see this happen. Probably won't happen this year, probably not next year, but they can gain more cash, more consistent revenue. Things are a little more predictable. I think we'll start seeing some repurchasing and really, again, adding back to the shareholder value, right? And so as I go in and start to wrap it up here, I want to look at the chart again, just give an idea. When I look at the chart, again, we think 240 is kind of that level with good news. We'll start to see a good bounce, good support, solid things, a little more predictable, right, than where we're at right now. Now, if we do get that, I believe that we can hit between 280 to about 300 by end of the year, and that's going to be Boeing recognizing the revenues from the deliveries, recognizing the deliveries and again the revenues from the defense business, the aerospace side. So we'll see, right? One thing I do want to point out is that when I go to the estimates, what am I seeing? I'm seeing that, again, they're going to return to equal EPS in 2022. That's the estimate. That's a good sign. But also, this is what I'm looking at, the target price. The median target price is 270. The mean is 263. When I take the options for about a year out, I believe about 370 plus days, so about a year, right? And I'll put that up on the screen. I'm actually seeing that over the time horizon in 1 standard deviation, we've got a price target of 281, and 2 standard deviations, meaning the extreme of the data, 341. So I think between that 280, 300 number, I think that's very, very solid. I think that's where we could be, right? And so that's it, guys. That's all I have for Boeing today. Like I said, if you guys are in the Discord, you know we've been talking about it forever. Definitely check it out because that's where we're getting all of the information. So if you're not in there, it's great value. A lot of cool things are being discussed. And so I hope to see you guys there. Thanks.